Hey guys, in this video I wanted to touch a bit about the gear subject of drawing and my experience of using a 2017 iPad Pro model, now that 2021 started. So what are my thoughts after 3 years of using this iPad for all sorts of creative tasks? If you want just a conclusion about it still being relevant or not in the current year, will I upgrade and can I count on it professionally? I time-stamped the conclusion so you can jump straight to it. If you want to hear my thought process at why I arrived at such thoughts, let's get started. First, to give some context, I used my iPad almost exclusively as a working device to draw on, create these videos, edit photos and so on. I rarely consume media on it, sometimes just a quick YouTube video or Google search, but that's about it. As such, it had about 1 hour of screen time per day during this period. This is an average, as sometimes I don't use it for multiple days and others I draw on it till the battery is dead. So first, I bought the iPad Pro in 2017 because I wanted to have an alternative other than my Intuos tablet to draw on. It was supposed to fill 2 gaps in my usual workflow with the Intuos on a desktop. So firstly, I wanted to try out a display tablet, because I was getting quite frustrated by having to draw on the tablet while looking at the screen and having my hand and eyes disconnected. And secondly, I wanted something more portable, to be able to draw more, because often having to start the computer, plug in the tablet, launch Photoshop was just too much of a hassle if I just had a quick sketch in mind. And I must say, the iPad did just what I wanted and so much more. So let's get the negatives out of the way first, to make our way to why I love it so much and I'm probably not upgrading anytime soon. I'll start by what I dislike about it over time, as it still annoys me to this day, because some specs can be annoying on paper but you quickly adapt and don't care about it anymore, but not the ones I'm about to mention. And also keep in mind this is my personal opinion, based solely on my usage, so this will vary entirely depending on how you use it. At the top of my list would have been the file system, but since iPadOS launched, few things have changed. Now I can plug an SD card reader and transfer files easily with a wired connection if I want, and that's a blessing. But it does bring me to my number one gripe, which is the Lightning port. It's like the only device I own that has this port, and I have to keep a Lightning cable just for it. Same goes for the accessories. I had to get a Lightning to SD card reader instead of just being able to use the USB one I already have. The Lightning port also has pretty low transfer speeds, and when I copy big video files from my camera to the iPad, it can get pretty long. Also, iPadOS doesn't have a progression bar for your files that you're transferring, so you don't really know how much longer you're gonna have to wait. I would much prefer a USB-C like on the next generations of iPad. This extends to the Apple Pencil, which has this Lightning connector on the back. Well, I love the Apple Pencil itself, and I never had any problem with its Lightning port, but it just scares me how fragile it seems and how gently I have to plug it in. So additionally, the need to have to plug it in when battery is low can get annoying, although it's pretty rare. So the new Pencil is pretty enticing to me. The next thing is the Google Drive integration with iPadOS. When you're in Google Drive and want to download the file, there's no download button and no download option in the menu, unlike for example on my Android phone or computer. So on the iPad I have to open 2 windows on the Files app and drag from the Google Drive folder to a folder on my iPad between the 2 windows, just for this download to happen. If it was just, for example, an image I wanted to have in my Photos app, then I will also have to share it after from the Files app to the Photos app. This can be mildly annoying sometimes. I don't need it much to transfer stuff on my iPad. I mostly use Google Drive to get things off of it, so it's not a problem in this case. But I don't know, it would be just simpler if it had all the functionalities of the usual Google Drive. And lastly is the on-screen keyboard. For me, it's really annoying not being able to have the numbers row above the letters. For example, again on my phone, I have the Swift key keyboard, and I toggled on the numbers row above the keyboard, so I don't need to press an option key to have these numbers. That's not available on the iPad, and not even on the Swift key version of the iOS keyboard. That's pretty annoying, but overall I really just don't like the experience of typing on screen. This would be easily resolved with a smart keyboard cover, but I don't have one, mostly because it would keep me with this Apple style keyboard and no dedicated numbers pad. If there ever is a keyboard released with a number pad on the side that attaches to the iPad, well, I'll eat my words and change my opinion. But until that time's come, it's a negative for me. So next, let's talk a bit about how the device has aged over these more than 3 years. Overall, it still keeps up pretty well. There's one thing I notice is the screen can get laggy when I use my finger only. For example, to swipe up or down on a web page, while there's no problem with the pencil if I use the same gesture. This can be a bit frustrating as it sometimes happens randomly in drawing apps when I want to pan around the drawing, but it's still completely usable, just a bit less responsive than before to my finger's touch. For the battery, I don't notice any major changes. It seems to last about as long as before, and the iPad holds pretty well in my opinion, no problem for me here. I'll pass on the camera system since I don't really use it. I used it a couple times to scan and send a document because my scanner wasn't working at that time, and it did its job, but nothing crazy worth mentioning. So overall, I think my iPad aged really well, and I absolutely don't get the feeling of it being obsolete at all. This is probably due to the continued software updates that it's still getting and keeping the device relevant and fresh. I'm talking mostly about the Apple updates here to the iPadOS system, but this is also true in regards to the app developers that put out really good updates for their applications. Apps like Procreate and RStudio Pro, for drawing for example, have gotten much better over the years of using them. There's LumaFusion for video editing that keeps bringing quality upgrades, the Affinity apps by Serif that can replace Photoshop and Illustrator. Just so much professional grade software that I use on a daily basis. I won't go into much detail about what I love about the iPad Pro in general because this is similar between all models. It's mostly, as I said, the app support, the community behind these creative apps, the really responsive feeling of drawing on the screen, and the overall portability of the device. Everything makes it a quick to access, easy to draw, and fun device. Now, let's talk about all the stuff I like on this iPad, but that also change on the next generations and kinda keep me from upgrading for now. First is the headphone jack. The next iPad got rid of it, and even though you can use an adapter with the USB-C port, I wouldn't do it, well, not unless I'm really forced to. The headphone jack provides an easy solution if I want to connect cheap intra earphones for a small amount of time. But I can also connect a good pair of headsets when audio is critical and I need something reliable to monitor it. That's not possible with just Bluetooth, and the only decent headset I have that connects via Bluetooth is a Plantronics Badbeat Pro, and this one doesn't work on the iPad, I don't know why. So for now, the headphone jack is still a must if I want to continue using my equipment. Next, we have the Touch ID and Home button. I like having at least one button to resort to if the iPad freezes, for example, and the screen gestures don't work anymore. In this case, a hard press on the home button and it just goes back to the home screen. It's basically a peace of mind to have something to be able to fall back on in case the touchscreen has a little bug. It's not going to be a deal breaker if I need to upgrade when this device dies one day, but I will probably miss it a bit. And going along with this button is the fact that this iPad has larger top and bottom bezels compared to the next gen ones. It does eat into the screen real estate and make the device bigger than it has to be, but I actually like it because it gives me more space to rest my hand when drawing on it or working, while not putting it on the canvas. Essentially, my hand covers less of the useful part of the screen because of the large bezels, because I always use it in landscape mode and it's a real convenience bonus. I quickly tried other tablets with smaller bezels and I did find it a bit more annoying to have more of my hand covering the canvas and the useful part of the screen. So while this bezel does make the device bigger without more useful screen and less cool looking, it does have a good use for me and I regret the new design even though it looks much better. I'm not as comfortable when drawing, which is why I bought it in the first place. So in the end, back to what I was saying at the beginning, the iPad became much more than I wanted. I hoped it would be some sort of digital sketchbook where I could start my sketches and idea and then transfer them over seamlessly to the desktop to work properly. But I find myself always finding ways to stay on the iPad and finish all of my work on it. So now all of my work and also these videos are done on it, as you can see from the weird aspect ratio. The absolute best part for me is that it doesn't feel like work. Because the apps are so streamlined and efficient, there is no friction when I want to start drawing. It is the same as taking a paper and a pen and starting, except it's just saved automatically as a digital format. I don't need to worry about saving, and this is also a huge factor in keeping the experience enjoyable. I never actually lost work on the iPad, so that's why I also created this channel to help more people get into this ecosystem and start without pulling their hair when everything isn't like on the computer. So all in all, yeah, I absolutely think the second generation iPad Pro, the 2017 one I bought, is still relevant today, and I will not be upgrading anytime soon. I still use it professionally and also as my daily driver for everything personal. It's really reliable, I didn't lose any work in all these years. So overall, the iPad was also a big factor into rekindling my love of drawing or painting. And if you're tired of the cumbersome process on desktop and having a big tablet, but you also want more options than just having a sketchbook, in that case, the iPad, I think, is a really good device by bridging these two universes of drawing. And also for drawing, you don't have to buy the latest versions because you won't need all the new processing power the latest version brings. But just keep in mind the difference between the ports available and mostly the bezels. That's about it. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope this was helpful for you and have a nice day. Bye.